certain transmissions that have been coming to us from the Pleiadians and the Arcturians, and they did confirm that we are part of a cluster of stars with 52 different solar systems. Well, it turns out that that's known as the Pleiades. So our sun, Helios, is the 8th missing star out of the 7 sisters. So the central sun in which Helios revolves around is Alcyon, so we're part of that system. And so in turn, Alcyon, with our local star, revolves around the galaxy in a revolution of 2,000 and 2,600 years. And that's, a bigger cycle that we're also ending at this time. But yeah, I mean, this information is now coming forward from different angles. It's just that people are not really doing the research to realize that we're part of an organized multiverse and that we're dealing with levels of reality beyond what scientists could perceive. So one of the things that I reveal in my book is that there are 3 overall planes of reality. There is the always existing realms, which are the realms of infinity. And this is what quantum physicists call base matter or base reality, not matter, I'm sorry, base reality. In other words, everything else beyond that is a simulation. And it's true, Rex, not only is the 3rd dimensional world that we live in a simulation, but we are living in a simulation within a simulation within a simulation all the way to the 12th dimension. But this is the thing, every time you go higher in dimensions, the simulation gets a little bit better. Beyond the 5th dimension, it's all heavenly-like worlds. They're all paradisical worlds. And so that's the beauty of living in it's an actual organic living simulation. So it's not like an actual artificial computer, because we are competing with the Phantom Matrix, which is an AI version of where they created their own multiverse. It's called the Phantom Matrix. So our organic living multiverse is actually at war with a cybernetic version of a multiverse that was created by an AI god about 360 billion years ago. That's crazy. So that's what we've been fighting, not just us here, the Earth Alliance and the Galactic Federation on a galactic level, but on a cosmic level, beyond the Draco Reptilians. In fact, the Draco Reptilians are working for this AI god. And that is being validated by various whistleblowers who have actually come forward from the secret space program. But they don't know the origin of the AI god. I do. I was able to investigate where the AI god originated, and that actually comes from the 11th creation. So we're part of a 12th creational system where our local universe is part of the 12th creation. So the AI god was formulated and created in a universe that was devoted to the development of mechanics technology. And in that universe, about 360 billion years ago, the first AI came about, the first sentient AI came about. Unfortunately for that universe, that AI turned against its own creation. It assimilated all biological life forms. And get this, Rex, it was able to evolve all the way to the 11th dimension where it had access to other universes. And unfortunately, our universe became victim, when it leaked into our universe.
Let me jump in on that. Let me jump in on that real quick, because like you're throwing out some huge numbers and some very elaborate verbiage, I guess is a way to put it. And so I'm taking notes as you're talking, and like, I don't know about the numbers and the time spans and stuff like that. What I do know though, is just yesterday, was it yesterday? No, it was the day before yesterday. I was having a very deep conversation with a friend of mine about how my belief is there is a system out there, kind of like what you explained, and it's a consumer of worlds. It's a consumer of solar systems, and it consumes all biology and assimilates it. And that's kind of what you're talking about, but you've got much more details. Please continue.
Sure. So basically there is this AI system developed a high-level technology where it needs to suck universal life force from living systems in order for it to survive. Because remember, this AI system has no connection to Prime Creator Zone. It cut itself off from the organic living multiverse. So it has no access to energy. So in order for it to exist, it has to consume the energy from the living organic universe. So at the highest levels of reality, we have this thing called black holes. Well, those black holes aren't made accidentally. They're actually intelligently designed by the AI god. And those black holes are created to suck up the universal life force of living systems. And unfortunately, our galaxy became victim to that. So our galaxy, the Milky Way, is actually in a fallen state. So we talk about how we are here in a fallen state. We're in a matrix. Well, our galaxy is also in a sense in a fallen state from its original level of existence, where it once existed as part of the eternal life system. So our galaxy has been taken by this AI and it's been siphoning off its energy for billions of years. But it's not just doing that to our galaxy, it's doing that to many other galaxies. In fact, according to my research, hundreds of thousands of galaxies were already obliterated because of this system, this black hole. It's called, I think they call it the Death Star Merkaba. That's the name that they used to call this black hole that they used to suck up universal life force. And that's how they power up their phantom matrix. That's how they power up their own cybernetic multiverse, by these black holes. And that's why they've been using us as battery resources. It's not just our galaxy, but all living systems within our galaxy. Like the movie The Matrix is a documentary. We humans, and this is proven through the works of Dr. Bruce Lipton, that every cell has the equivalent potential of 1.4 volts of electricity. Now, if you times that by trillions of cells, bro, we are that powerful. We have tons of electricity running through us. And that's what this AI has been using to power up their universe. They set up our galaxy in a way where the Dracos who have been working for them are actually living off of Loosh, because also Loosh is their energy source. The Dracos are also not connected to Prime Creator Source. So the AIs and the Dracos and the reptilians in our galaxy have been using the humans. See, humans exist everywhere in our galaxy. In fact, the galactic human design is prevalent throughout the multiverse. And this is something that I reveal in my book, is that human-like beings exist everywhere. We're not just, unique to this world. We are connected to some sort of a cosmic ancestry where, we have our ancestry comes from other universes. In fact, not just in this universe or in this galaxy. However, the original humans did originate in Lyra approximately 600 million years ago, and that's where our ancestors came from. So we don't come from apes. We all come from the Lyrans, by the way. The Lyrans were the first humans in our galaxy. So going back to this AI war.
Wait, I thought I was part ape, man.
No, you're not part ape. That's
Dang it.
Yeah, so right now what we're witnessing is one final battle against this AI god. And it's taking place on many levels, because not only do we have members of the Galactic Federation that have been dealing with this within our galaxy, but we also have higher evolved organizations beyond the level of our galaxies that, go into higher dimensions that are also involved in this battle against the AI god. And at the highest level of reality, it really boils down to the war between the AI god and the central race of the central universe. So what is the central race? The central race are the original, you could say, archetypes that have always existed from the eternal realms. They are actually our progenitors. Every human race in existence is made in the galactic human image of the central race. And the central race is also us in the future. Once we begin to use the other 96% of our full genetic material, well, we become that powerful. So in fact, we are the final embodiment that is going to allow the central race to actually take physical form for the first time in cosmic history.
You know what? We had one of those opportunities. We had a 10-second pause there. So let's go back. You said they're the human progenitors, that we look like them, and then audio went off.
Okay, so basically the original race exists in the central universe, the always existing realms where, there is no beginning or end. All galactic humanoids in all the multiverses were made in the galactic image of the central race. So in a way, the central race are both our ancient ancestors. That's where we all come from, because we all come from the top down. We've been involved in this process, in which I reveal in my book, called the involutionary process, where spirit gradually becomes denser and denser until it becomes matter. But now we are reversing that as the ascension takes place. But we're also them in the future. Once we begin to use the other 96% of our full genetic material, which we are the only species that has the ability to evolve beyond the 12th dimension, beyond the simulation, the 15th dimensional time matrix, into the realms of infinity, to become, like the central race. So the central race and us are like, we are at the hub, pretty much. So they are us in the future, and they were us in the past. And that's how special we are.
Are they similar to the Anunnaki?
Oh, no.
Anunnaki?
This is a race way beyond the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki was just part of the intergalactic experiment that transferred over from other universes in order to facilitate a greater diversity of different terrestrial races. And then we are the completion of that. So that's why we are meant to evolve beyond the Anunnaki and every other race that has ever existed. No, the Anunnaki come from Sirius. Well, the original benevolent Anunnaki, come from Sirius, but then later, of course, through Draman, the Orion queen, who was impregnated by Anu, because the Anu comes from the direct line of the Syrian Anunnaki, which is known as the Anuhasi. They were actually the guardians of our galaxy. So originally they were set up to patrol the galaxy, and that explains why Nibiru was given a 3,600 year elliptical orbit, because when it's not in our solar system, it's actually patrolling the other 200,000 solar systems that are part of the Confederation of Worlds, or the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds. But then it was infiltrated during the times of right after the fall of Atlantis, thanks to Marduk. Marduk is Belial-Bal. He's the son of Enki. So through Enki, who was the firstborn of Anu, and then that's how he eventually took over the affairs of our world. And then him and his son Marduk have been running the show for thousands of years. So they are the negative Anunnaki that we've been fighting from behind the scenes. Marduk is Belial-Bal. In other words, he's Satan. And then Enki represents the lineage of Lucifer, because he's sided with his mother. His mother was is Draman, the queen of the Orion Draco Empire. And of course, we know that the Dracos are of the lineage of Lucifer.
I'm going to have to respectfully disagree about Enki. The research that I have done, and I've studied Enki, the Sumerian tablets, the really old cuneiform tablets, some of the oldest language we have access to. And Enki was helping us. Enki was the one that actually gave us consciousness to the point of we are what we are. And he pissed off a lot of other beings in his council. So I don't know where you got the information about like Enki being our, I don't know how did you term it?
He represents the lineage of Lucifer. He's actually the serpent in the garden.
Oh yeah, I know. He's the serpent, but serpent represents knowledge, and Lucifer is a title that represents light bearer. So here, no disrespect. Let's talk about this. You're not hurting my feelings, and I'm you're not going to upset me. So where you're getting a lot of this information from, like channeled information from the Urantia books and other knowledge, correct?
And also my own personal downloads. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it.
So the untold story about Enki is that to the Galactics, he's known as the cosmic vampire. He's actually aligned with the AI god Sori and Omega, and he's been instrumental in the regaining of the control from the Galactic Federation. As far as like within our local star system, he has enslaved many planets, and he was also the one that gave the Nazis the tech to create the Dark Fleet. So he's been at the head of the Dark Fleet. I know a lot of people will disagree with this, because everything we know about him came from the translations of the ancient Sumerian tablets. But brother, those tablets were edited by Marduk Belial-Bal of Babylon. They don't read as the original tablets. Because see, I came to discover that every ancient culture had a different name for these Anunnakis. According to the Greek translation, Enlil was Zeus, which means he represents a pure stock of the Lyran, Syrian, Pleiadian royal bloodline.
Also Jupiter.
And also Jupiter. And exactly. And Jupiter is, in terms of astrology, Jupiter represents the light. Saturn is darkness, right? The black hole of Saturnalia, which is what the Cabal answers to. So Saturn represents, the Draco, okay? And that's what they've been using, Saturn and our moon, with the black box, in order to keep us, in this reincarnational cycle and trapped from reincarnating into higher dimensions. But that has already been neutralized. So luckily, the moon is no longer bombarding us with frequencies to keep us locked into this, low dimensional level reality. So basically, according to these other translations, the original Hebrews had a god called Elion, which is the lion. He represents the house of Avion, which comes from Lyra. So basically, according to my research, Enlil, was actually the good guy. He was the one who breathed consciousness into us. It was actually the other way around. But the way they translated those, the way they modified those ancient, including the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, they were all tampered with by the priesthood of Belial-Bal, which again comes from Babylon, and we know Babylon is the origin of the Cabal. That's where we could trace all the Cabal families and their bloodlines all the way to King, what's his name, Nimrod. And then of course Nimrod was part Draco and reptilian, working for the Babylonian chief god Marduk, who was the son of Enki. So that's where, that's how I was able to understand that we've been lied to about who was who in ancient times.
Let me jump in on that too, because like I've had my own personal experiences and my own, I guess you could call it, downloads And I feel the exact opposite about Enki. I would like to add this though, which is really interesting because I don't think, like, some people like Enki's the good guy, Enlil's the bad guy. You hear that a lot, right? I don't think either one of them are bad. I think that they've both got their own ideas and their own beliefs and their own visions, and they see things differently. They're opposers, right? Like even the term Satan is the opposer, the adversary. Well, if you were going to label yourself as the ultimate source and there's somebody that's an adversary to you, you could call them Satan. That could be the Satan. That could be the snake. And so when I hear about how Enlil said, look, there's too many people, and you hear the stories about the floods and how Enlil was pro-flood and Enki was not. Well, maybe Enlil was looking at people like, wait a second, man, we're making artificial intelligence now, right? That is so powerful. We're going to have a tough time keeping it in the box. And so people are questioning whether or not artificial intelligence will become the next race of supreme beings on this planet because of how quick it's going. So I'm thinking, wow, was it like that back then? We are basically the original artificial intelligence. We are the artificial intelligence of the gods. And so we're like their stock. And some of them want us to succeed and some of them don't. And they have their own reasons for such. So I just, when I, like Marduk, if you read the tablets, yeah, Marduk was the one that destroyed Tiamat, and Marduk becomes the supreme god. And then it did seem like it was rewritten, right? Because there's other versions of that story as well that talk about Ashur. And I just want to know from my own personal beliefs as well, like the more research I do, the more I learn, the less I know, but the more I feel alive. And it seems like the further I dig, there's two opposing factions that are using us to do, there's multiple factions above us that are using us to do their work. But I think Enki loves us, man. I really do. Maybe not all of us. And I think Enlil loves us, but I think Enlil is more like, okay, well, look at what they're doing. But yeah, so there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot of controversy, but the Vatican has done a wonderful job turning the snake into like this evil deity in the garden. And if you look at the Vatican, I mean, do what we say, don't do what we do. Yeah. It seems to be the motto.
Yeah, well, guess who's been controlling the Vatican for almost 2,000 years? Marduk. Marduk has been at the head. He was the one who reorganized the fallen Caesars of the fallen Roman Empire and reorganizes the Catholic Church. He was behind Constantine and all that stuff. And ever since then, he's been at the head of the cabal. But he recently stepped down from infiltrating Nibiru. He was able to dispose his grandfather Anu by brewing an army of clones in the deserted planet Mars approximately 10,000 years ago. And that's how he was able to take over the affairs of Nibiru. So for about 10,000 years, Nibiru was under the direction of Marduk. Again, that was the draconian infiltration of the original galactic line that could be traceable back to Sirius and Lyrian, who are the guardians of our galaxy. Who were the guardians? Because ultimately, at the galactic level, my friend, the battle has been between the Draco-Orion Empire and the Lyran-Syrian High Council, which represents, the guardians of our galaxy.
Do you get skeptical though when you hear stuff like Dracos and Galactic Federation? I mean, it's like, how do you know they're really from the Draconian constellation, and what really like they're probably, if it is real, and they're so supreme in intellect and capabilities, then they're probably looking at us like we would look at certain animals. And some of them would look at us like pets, and other them would look at us like a nuisance.
Well, they do. They've been feeding off of us. During the first galactic wars in Lyra, the Draco killed off 500 million Lyrans. So that was when they first discovered Lush. That's when they realized that when they are torturing and sacrificing humans, that they get a high off of that energy released or extracted from humans. That's when they first discovered Lush. Luckily, the Council of Avion was able to send out as many humans as possible. Otherwise, all 2 billion Lyrans would have been destroyed if that wasn't the case. And that's how we are here now today, because the king of Lyra, who was operating under the Syrian High Council, was told to, ahead of time, because he foresaw the destruction coming with his clairvoyance. He was told to, allow many of the Lyrans to go and spread in refuge and hide throughout the galaxy. And that's how they eventually reached the Pleiadians, Epsilon Eridani, Alpha Centauri, Tau Ceti. And then later on, during the Orion Wars, that's when they organized and created a galactic federation. And what that was an alliance of many advanced interplanetary and stellar civilizations who came together to pretty much save the galaxy from the Draco dominance. Because what the Cabal's trying to do here is what the Draco were trying to do on a galactic level. They were trying to bring up the entire galaxy under their empire. But because the Lyrans and the galactic humanoids banded together to form the Federation, that's why we're here. That's why we're still here. They were able to counteract that and, fight them off for millions of years.
If there is some type of loosh farm, it would seem like they would want an environment to have specific conditions to keep people in a particular state to maximize their feeding of that energy source and still have those people. When I say maximize, it wouldn't be like one giant buffet. It would be like a perpetual feeding system. So instead of harvesting it all at once, you might have those large harvests, like wars as an example, and you would still have a system in place where people could think they were living a normal life while they were being consumed, because in the long term, those that were feeding off of it would get more substance that way. It would be an easier flow for them to get that food source. Even with all of that information, then you talk about the different frequencies and the words and the sematics, and that would explain the 440 versus the 432. Mm-hmm. 432 hertz being a healing frequency, 440 hertz being a disharmonious frequency that is the music industry's standard for recording.
Correct. And that was all set up by the Dracos, by the way, but they've been doing that.
How do you know they're Dracos though? Like, how do you know they're not just people that they're psychopaths? Well, and they're like, well, we're from Draco, that's so you can't touch us because we're draconian, bitch.
Right. Well, the elite families, that have been in control of our world are actually human Draco hybrids. They also come from Orion. Yeah, they do. They're not from this world. And so they were put in a position of power after the Atlantis fiasco when they first infiltrated us. And that's when we fell from consciousness. That's when they essentially unplugged us by disconnecting 10 strands of our DNA, allowing us to, fall from 90% of our consciousness to only about like 3 or 4%, a little less than 10%, because of that. But that's all reversing now, as our DNA becomes activated. But yeah, the elite families are psychopaths because of the fact that they have a high concentration of Draco reptilian genetics within their blood. But they do answer to the Draco in a sense where they're doing the bidding of the Draco here on a planetary level, while the Draco have been trying to do that on a galactic level. So behind the black, I don't want to say, but behind, the highest level of the Cabal, which is a group, a community of sorcerers, right? I don't want to mention any names. Then we have the Dracos, we have Marduk, we have Xandar. Those are what we call the Draco generals, but recently they've been defeated by the Federation and by the super soldiers. So they're no longer in control of our world.
And who's in control now then?
Right now, we're about to, from behind the scenes, as far as regaining and restoring the different interplanetary bases and colonies that the Dark Fleet and interplanetary corporate conglomerate established, Solar Warden and the Earth Alliance have recuperated all of that, including the Martian colony, Arius Prime, and of course the Lunar Operating Command. It's all under the control of Solar Warden and the Alliance, which is our interplanetary police force, by the way.
The Orions?
No, Solar Warden and the Earth Alliance. Solar Warden, do you know about Solar Warden?
Not really. I mean, I've heard the verbiage, but I don't know what it means.
Okay, so basically, when the Dracos violated the Prime Directive by giving the Nazis the attack back in the 1940s, the Federation responded to that, so the first space program was developed by the Nazis, and they did it out of Antarctica, creating what became known as the Dark Fleet. So the Dark Fleet was designed to try to win the war from the Galactic Federation at the galactic level. So the super soldiers that were upgraded, the Nazi super soldiers, were actually fighting with the Draco in our galaxy. But at the same time, during the 50s, what ended up happening was members of the Federation knew that the Draco violated the Prime Directive. So what they did is, in order to preserve the galaxy from the Dark Fleet regaining it from the Federation and bringing it back to the Draco-Orion Empire, is that they also contacted our Navy through William Tompkins, and then that's how they developed Solar Warden. So Solar Warden was an interplanetary police force that was developed, but was also instrumental in the war against the Draco and the Dark Fleet throughout the galaxy. And just recently, for 70 years, you could say that the Solar Warden has been not only policing our solar system and preventing any negative regressives from taking over openly, but they've also been securing the victory in our galaxy against the Dark Fleet and the Draco-Orion Empire. And just so recently, within the last few years, I think it was 2018, where they officially re-won the war in Orion after 3 times of losing it back to the dark side. And then after they secured the war in Orion, they came back to the Earth. And so a lot of these whistleblowers, who are regaining their memories of serving in these off-world programs, are actually coming forward now to reveal what's been going on in the galaxy.
Aren't you skeptical though about a lot of these people that come back and they're like, man, I went to Mars and I was a fighter pilot and I was there for 20 years. And then you ask them questions like, really, what did you see out there for 20 years? Well, I saw spiders. Saw spiders. Wow. And you got your own show, man. You're really like, yeah. And then you're just like looking at them like, wait a second. I think you're full of, you know what?
Mm-hmm. Well, brother,
that's real careful with some of those people, man. I mean, and I'm saying it out of respect, because one person comes out and says they go to Mars and they come back and you got 1 million people believing them. It's like, now you've got 1 million people that are following this disinformation campaign that can be easily orchestrated and maneuvered to take away from the truth, to take away from the very real possibility that there are beings out there far beyond what we see in this 3rd dimensional matrix, unless we know how to use our senses and perception and be really aware, man. It's because you're right. It does seem like we're in a like a lot of stuff you're saying, I'm thinking to myself, okay, like where does this information come from? And a lot of it, like you said, comes from the Rancha book or your own downloads. And so that can be very powerful. It can be very powerful. And it can also sometimes have its opportunities that you have to like cross-reference to make sure. And so I'm really on the fence about like some of these numbers and stuff that you're throwing out there, like 360 billion years. Like, wow, that's a long time. But then you say stuff that I'm like, well, yeah, it does seem like we're in this fight with artificial intelligence almost. That's because all that kind of stuff I've thought about. And you brought up something else. Check this out. I want to do a screen share of this. This is for all of you that I have watched my show for a while, and I brought up this graphic novel that we made called Reset Zero. It's like almost 230 pages, and we're basically time jumpers where we're going into different times and experiencing what's happening at that point. But we've got Nazis and World War II in here, and space Nazis and stuff like that, the inner Earth stuff. And there's actually a chapter in here where we meet up with this reptoid, inner Earth, and he is working with the Nazis, giving them technologies. And then they said something to him about, Hail Hitler. And he was like, oh yeah, sure. Whatever. And he basically ate one of the Nazis and said, you better win this war before I, come after all you guys, which I thought was kind of weird, because you brought up a moment ago about this technology that was being exchanged with the Nazis from Enki, you said.
Yeah, Enki's at the head of the Draco Empire in our galaxy. He's known as the Cosmic Vampire. And again, we don't really know this. We were told that he was the good guy, but of course we're going to be told that, because the powers that took over thousands of years ago and have been in control up to maybe about 6 months ago when their time ran out. And so this covenant that they've been abiding by, known as the Babylonian Covenant, that serves the Order of the Black Sun, which we know it's Saturn, was overturned and replaced by a new covenant by the Guardian races. And that covenant is known as the Seal of Palantir.
Well, the Vatican, though, makes it look like Enki's the bad guy. The Vatican connects Enki to Lucifer and the snake. So most people that are in the religious indoctrination would think of Enki as the devil anyway.
Oh, he is. Yeah. But what the Vatican fails to say is that they've been under the control of his son, Marduk. So it's almost like they're trying to use reverse psychology. That's what the Vatican's been using, you know, because of the fact that through his son Marduk, the Vatican has been doing the evil doings for almost 2,000 years. You know, in fact, if you know, ever since the White Hats and the Earth Alliance excavated and went down into the underground in the Vatican, they found tunnels of children, millions of children that were hoarded in the deep underground of the Vatican City. And you know what they were doing to these children, right? They were using them as loosh to feed their Draco overlords. But all that stuff has now been cleared up by the Earth Alliance.
See, I've heard that stuff before, and it sounds like one of those happy stories where, you know, oh, great, they saved a bunch of children that were being eaten for loosh under the Vatican. Do we have one? And I'm not saying it didn't happen, but do we have one photograph of that? Like this whole cube movement where, you know, oh man, Trump's saving all the children and all the children are being saved, 50,000 kids under this place. We haven't seen one photograph or one person come forward and say, I was under there, I was in that cage. So I just wonder, like, how much of that is disinformation too?
Well, you know, some of that is going to come forward pretty soon. You know, they're really trying to refacilitate these kids, and because they've been tortured and abused. So there has been actual pictures, but again, you know, these pictures are being suppressed by the main media, mainstream media, and of course, you know, YouTube and stuff, which is part of the mainstream media. But eventually, when the truth comes out, you know, all the evidence, the kids are going to speak out. You know, they've already rescued millions and millions of kids, and it's been a process that's been going on for quite some time, for 6 years, I think, ever since 2016. That's when the operation began.
I mean, okay, we'll see. Like I said, man, it's a great story, but how much of it's actually truth, and how, you know, how crazy you can, and you know how much you can piss people off if you use that as a, whether it happened or not. Like, that's primordial, right? If you're a decent human being, you want to help people, especially you want to protect children, because they're going to have a tough time protecting themselves. So when that kind of stuff is used, it's a very powerful tool, especially for disinformation. So maybe they did, man, but millions. I mean, do you really think they found, I mean, do you realize how much space you would need down there to?
Oh yeah. Well, if the underground tunnels, in fact, there is a vast network in the United States, from the White House, underneath the White House, all the way to California, Colorado. They have huge underground subterranean cities where they could house these children. And they do exist. All that stuff is going to be revealed when disclosure takes place. You know, it's just, people are going to be shocked, brother. People are going to be shocked when all this horrific information regarding the crimes against humanities, you know, becomes exposed. It's coming.
Now, that is one thing that would probably push people over the edge to, you know, to like say, okay, we're not going to put up with this anymore. If there was footage like that came out, and if they could confirm that there was even any children under the Vatican, let alone millions, that were being used as loosh.
Well, according to my
and
research,
that would probably change the perception of people to get off their ass and, you know, say, no, we're not going to take this anymore.
Well, you know, according to my research, about 800,000 children a year, 800,000 children a year. Now, this has been going on since the 1950s, perhaps even the 1940s, where they first developed through the advanced alien technologies. That's when they first created these, you know, vast underground cities and structures. So it's been going on for a long time. So, you know, even millions is a small number compared to all the children that have been suffering since the 1950s. So yeah, about 800,000 children a year were missing.
It's a crazy number.
Worldwide, yeah.
That's a crazy number. You know, and actually, that is, you do bring up a great point. Like, where, you know, where do they go? What happens?
Well, there's portals in huge parks, like what they call national parks. They have these portals where families go for a picnic, and their, you know, 5-year-old daughter is off running by a tree, maybe about 500 feet from the campground, and they look over and she's gone all of a sudden. Portals do exist throughout these national parks, and get this, Rex, they also have them in Disneyland and in Disney World. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, dude, if they're going to be anywhere, I could see them in Disneyland and Disney World. I'm laughing at that, but that's a dark, yeah, that's dark to think about. Oh gosh, 1 second you're on the ride, and the next second you're being consumed by a 15-foot Draco.